Hello and welcome. Here's what's happening right now. After powerful words on the world stage, a rallying cry for Canadians.
But Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian.
The path to the future and a sharp message to President Trump.
You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little back, a little off the front lines.
Disparaging remarks toward allied forces.
All I want is for him to be safe and back here.
Plus, more outrage in Minneapolis after ICE detains a 5-year-old boy.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Sandy is away today. On the heels of his acclaimed speech in Davos, Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke directly to Canadians today. At a Liberal cabinet retreat in Quebec City, Carney issued a call for unity, saying our country can be a beacon for all. And he shot back at President Trump, who took aim at him yesterday. CTV's Abigail Beeman is in Quebec City and has more. Abigail.
Well, Carolyn, you mentioned an acclaimed speech in Davos, and the one world leader it did not sit well with, U.S. President Donald Trump, who fired back that Canada needs the U.S. to live. Now, you could describe his speech today as a version of the Davos speech, but tailored for the domestic crowd. So messaging about Canadian values and identity and his government's agenda going forward. And one line was in direct response to the American president.
Canada and the United States have built a remarkable partnership in the economy, in security, and in rich cultural exchange. But Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian.
Worth noting, the Prime Minister has not taken questions since Sunday, not since that speech in Davos, nor its response, and he was not taking questions from reporters today.
Abigail, with the new session of Parliament on the horizon, what are you hearing about the government's priorities?
Well, that's right. The top-line messaging here and the focus of these meetings is about the economy and affordability. Cabinet is being briefed this afternoon by a variety of special guests, so to speak. Those are people from banks, investment institutions, as well as food banks and Quebec City's mayor. This is also a chance for ministers to hear from the Prime Minister for the first time since his trip to China, a change in the relationship with China, and a controversial trade deal that has the auto industry as well as Ontario's premier concerned. And a note about the location where we are. This is all taking place at Quebec City's Citadel. The meetings are inside the official second residence of the Governor General. And this whole fortress was built in preparation for a potential American invasion that never materialized. Carolyn?
All right, thanks, Abigail. Let's bring in our CTV chief political correspondent, Vashi Kapelos. Vashi, this was the second major speak from Carney in just a week. What's your takeaway from what we heard today?
Well, two quick things that I would point out, Carolyn. And the first is around that comment that both you and Abigail referenced, directed at what President Trump said in his response to the original Davos speech. Basically, Canada does not live for the United States. I compared that with the original speech that we had prior to the delivery of it, and that line wasn't in there, which tells me that the Prime Minister decided to add it after the fact. And I'm very curious to see if there is a reaction in the United States to that, given that we have USMCA negotiations starting very shortly and lasting through the next 6 months. That could end up being a pretty consequential decision on his part. The second thing that stood out to me about this speech was that it had some of the same intonation as the Davos speech, but didn't contain much domestic policy or new domestic policy. This was very much aimed at sort of striking up Canadian identity. In my mind, actually sounded much more like an election-type speech than it did one heading back to the House of Commons. So people who were looking for some way to bridge exactly what he had said in Davos to what it means for their life might be left wanting. At the end of the day, like I said, it felt more like an election speech than a policy prescription. Maybe that's coming later. Wasn't today.
All right, thanks, Vashi. Well, that speech from Carney earlier this week is still spurring reaction, including from U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. In his own speech at the forum today, Lutnick had pointed remarks for Carney and what he described as whining from Canada. CTV's Mike Lecouture now on what it could mean for trade and CUSMA negotiations. Mike.
Carolyn, while world leaders continue to praise the Prime Minister's speech in Davos, at least one member of Trump's administration is taking a shot at Mark Carney.
Give me a break. They have the second best deal in the world. And all I got to do is listen to this guy whine and complain?
U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick called the Prime Minister's speech in Davos political noise. Tuesday, Mark Carney urged middle powers to band together against more powerful countries that use economic coercion. Lutnick warned those words will be remembered during this summer's trade review.
They have USMCA, which means 85% of the Canadian economy comes into the United States for zero. And there he is complaining that he's going to go to China and improve it.
Canada's finance minister pushed back on those comments.
Prime Minister said a lot of things that people thought, and he had the courage to say it loud. I think Canadians have understood by now that diversification is key.
Meanwhile, the reverberations of Carney's message continue to be felt with other world leaders.
I think we have a lot of Europeans who are in this first camp of multilateralism, whereas the American administration is driving multipolarity. And we're trying to make these two things meet.
Australia's treasurer called the speech stunning, adding it makes a powerful point about the old world order being over.
So the job for us, the job for our Canadian friends, is to work out how we can shape all of this change in our own interests.
California governor and possible Democratic presidential contender Gavin Newsom also praised Carney at Davos for calling out the current state of the world, adding Americans need to do the same. Carolyn?
Thanks, Mike. Well, after striking a framework of a deal on Greenland with NATO Secretary General, President Trump climbed down from taking the territory by force and imposing tariffs on European nations. And today we're getting a better sense of what was discussed. CTV senior correspondent Judy Trin is looking at Canada's role. Judy.
Carolyn, this framework for talks involves all the NATO countries in the Arctic Circle.
Canada to really step up.
The framework for negotiating the future of Greenland was drafted in a meeting between the U.S. President and NATO's Secretary General. It could include more American bases and troops on Greenland and drilling rights to critical minerals, all to prevent Russia and China from gaining a foothold in the Arctic.
When it comes to Greenland specifically, their economy, their military situation, Russia and China will never get access.
And the Danes and sovereignty, is that all assured?
We didn't discuss at all about that issue.
The leaders of Denmark and the semi-autonomous territory of Greenland were not part of the discussion. They're not willing to give up their sovereignty.
We have some clear red lines what's been delivered to the president, and nothing about a deal on mineral resources or anything else. But that's something the further discussions that we are willing to take.
You know, NATO cannot just make an agreement with the United States about Greenland. NATO does not have that authority. So we're going to have to see how that plays out.
The framework involves boosting security for the entire Arctic region. There are 8 countries in the Arctic Circle, other than Russia. All of them are NATO members. At Davos, the NATO chief met with Mark Carney. The Prime Minister committed to fully participating in the defense of the region. In a readout, Carney emphasized Canada's plan to quadruple defense spending over the next decade with investments in the Arctic, such as over-the-horizon radar, year-round presence on land, sea, and air, and new critical infrastructure. Canada currently has about 300 full-time soldiers protecting the Arctic, along with 1,700 Canadian Rangers and 4 military bases in the north. Carolyn.
Thanks, Judy. Well, today it was Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's turn to address leaders at the World Economic Forum, where he expressed harsh criticism of Europe's response to Russian aggression and the fight over Greenland.
If you send 40 soldiers to Greenland, what is that for? What message does it send?
Zelensky went on to call Europe a fragmented kaleidoscope of small and middle powers, saying it needs to show more courage. There was also strong reaction to comments President Trump made to Fox News today, disparaging NATO allies.
Never needed them We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan or this or that. And they did. They stayed a little off the front lines.
158 members of the Canadian Armed Forces were killed on the front lines of Afghanistan. Thousands more were injured. CTV's Andrew Johnson spoke with one Canadian vet today and has more. Andrew.
Carolyn, Donald Trump's claim NATO troops played only a minor role in Afghanistan is not sitting well with Canadian veterans who were there, part of our country's largest deployment of troops since the Second World War. Bruce Moncour served in 2006 as part of Operation Medusa and says he is enraged.
We were the front line. We took over Kandahar from the Americans because of their war in Iraq, and we alleviated those forces so that they could move them to Iraq. We were as frontline can get.
Moncour was actually seriously hurt when his platoon was hit by friendly fire from U.S. troops.
An American A-10 Warthog fired on our position without looking at his coordinates. I had to have 5% of my brain removed. I had to relearn how to read, write, walk, talk, and effectively ended my military career.
40,000 Canadians would go on to serve in the region, including the 158 who were killed. There was also plenty of outrage online from the dozens of NATO countries involved in the war. People posting photos like this one, captioned, "Canadian soldiers leaving Afghanistan in 2006 after doing nothing." Moncour says of his 40-member platoon, only 5 people were not killed or wounded in Afghanistan. He calls what's going on with Trump and the U.S. right now scary. Carolyn.
Thanks, Andrew. School officials in Minneapolis say ICE agents targeted and detained a 5-year-old boy on his way home. Photos show Liam Ramos in custody in just the latest incident to inflame tensions in the state. CTV's Joy Malbin now on what we're hearing from immigration officials and the boy's school.
His name is Liam Ramos. He's 5 years old. Wearing a blue bunny hat, he attends a preschool in Minnesota. His teachers say he was rounded up by ICE agents. According to lawyers, he's now in detention with his father in Texas. Liam is just one of 4 children detained by ICE agents in the last 2 weeks from the same school district.
He's a bright young student. All I want is for him to be safe and back here.
The raids are part of President Donald Trump's hardline crackdown on immigration. He promised to go after the worst of the worst and deport them.
They're murderers, they're drug lords.
Liam is not a violent offender. The family lawyer says he was used as bait to lure other people from their home. The family is applying for asylum, but instead of leaving Liam with relatives, ICE agents put him in detention.
ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death?
The vice president in Minneapolis trying to lower the temperature after 2 weeks of unrest. The ICE raids have ripped Minneapolis apart with more agents than police on the streets. Tensions are high after the fatal shooting of Renee Good by an ICE officer. Minnesota's governor and mayor don't want them there, now under criminal investigation for possible obstruction. For the teachers at Columbia Heights, now missing a little boy, this is inexcusable.
ICE agents have been roaming our neighborhoods, circling our schools, following our buses, coming into our parking lots and taking our children, and our hearts are shattered.
Joy Malbin, CTV News, Washington.
Coming up, the latest in the saga to move Marineland's whales.
It could very well be the best place for these animals to go.
And the sinking reality if the plan falls apart. A brutal cold snap is gripping parts of central Canada with wind chills plummeting to -50. Extreme temperatures and weather warnings span from Alberta to northwestern Ontario, and the cold air is heading east with southern Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada expected to plunge into a deep freeze by the weekend. The fate of 30 whales and 4 dolphins at Marineland in Ontario is once again in question. The former theme park has sent a plan to the federal government asking for permits to ship the animals to 4 aquariums in the U.S. But if the request is denied, Marineland is reportedly warning they may have to euthanize them. CTV's John Venevali Rao has more.
Since last summer, the future of these belugas has been a huge question mark, captive in a shuttered theme park which closed months ago. Now Marineland in Niagara Falls pitching a plan to ship the animals to the States, reportedly making plans to euthanize them if Ottawa says no to the proposal.
I think it could very well be the best place for these animals to go. But I think it's so wrong that Marineland is holding the government hostage and they're threatening to kill their whales if they don't get the answer that they're looking for.
In what's being called an urgent rescue proposal, Marineland's 30 remaining belugas and 4 dolphins would reportedly be sent to aquariums in Orlando, Atlanta, Chicago, and Stonington, Connecticut. Marineland has said it can't afford to look after the whales and wants to sell the property. Last year, it pitched transferring them to an aquarium in China, but Ottawa denied that request.
You want to send them to a place where there's accountability. The original proposal to send the whales to China didn't address that. This new proposal does.
Some had hoped they could be moved to a proposed seaside sanctuary in Nova Scotia, but it has yet to raise the millions it needs to open. In a statement, the Fisheries Minister's office confirmed the minister was presented with new export permit applications and that the minister will review them expeditiously. 20 whales have died at Marineland since 2019, and experts say sending them to multiple aquariums in the U.S. is hardly a perfect solution.
It's going to break them up, so that's not great for family and relationship bonds between the animals.
And some would like to see assurances they won't be used for breeding, which is illegal in Canada. Still, the experts we talked to all think Ottawa will give the proposal a green light, given the options that remain. Carolyn.
Thanks, John. Still ahead, charged with murdering his girlfriend in Mexico. An accused killer reveals his side of the story. A Canadian man at the center of a murder mystery in Mexico is making his first public statement. Ryan Friesen was charged with killing his girlfriend, Kiera Agnew, who was found beaten to death at a resort in 2023. But a Mexican court found him not guilty. W5's Avery Haynes has spent months looking into this case. Here's an excerpt from her upcoming report.
Ryan Friesen is back living in Dawson Creek, British Columbia. He's refused repeated requests for an interview, but in a statement writes, "My desire for justice is unwavering, and I hope that those truly responsible are identified and held fully accountable for their actions." At his judge-only trial in 2024, he was found not guilty, based on the fact Friesen's DNA was not found under Kiera's fingernails, while unknown DNA was present, and the belief that her injuries were too severe to have been inflicted by one person. In his statement, Friesen writes, "Legal proceedings against me have unfortunately impeded the investigation to find the actual perpetrators."
And Avery Haynes joins us now with more. Thanks for being with us. You spoke with the victim's stepfather. What did he have to say about the case?
Yeah, Kiera's stepdad, Ricky, says that he was invited to a meeting that was put on by Ryan Friesen and his dad and his Mexican lawyer in their hometown of Dawson Creek, British Columbia, last summer, 2 years after Kiera was murdered. And the stepfather says that he believed it was to try to stop these protests that some members of the family had been holding across the country. But it's the first time we got a sense to hear of what Ryan claims happened that night. And this is what Ricky says Ryan told him, that they were at the bar drinking at the resort at about midnight, that they went back to their room, that they got into an argument, that Ryan fell asleep, and that when he woke up at about 2:30 in the morning, Kiera was gone, and that he left the hotel room and followed the sounds of her screams, went to the laundry room, that it was locked, somebody opened the door, that there were 3 or 4 men inside the laundry room, that Kiera was alive, saying that she had been sexually assaulted. And the stepdad, Ricky, said, I asked him 3 times to answer what he thought was the most important question. What happened next? How did you get from the door to being found laying beside her body? And Ryan Friesen couldn't answer that question, according to the stepdad.
Avery Haynes, thank you for your reporting.
Thank you.
And you can watch part 2 of Avery's investigation tonight on CTV National News at 11, and the full documentary, If I'm Ever Found Dead, airs this Saturday at 7 p.m. on CTV and on Crave. After coming so close to winning the World Series, excitement for the upcoming Blue Jays season is already sky high.
They were a team that just kind of came out of nowhere. So can they repeat that? You know, hopefully.
Tickets went on sale this morning at 10, and by 10:15, the home opener had already sold out. Thousands of fans were waiting in the digital queue. The cheapest ticket went for roughly $150. Fans lucky enough to get one will be treated to a special pre-game ceremony to celebrate the team's 50th season.
Come on, open the door, let on out of here.
Stay. It's you?
Of course it's me, open the door.
That ain't your brother.
That was a clip from the horror movie Sinners, which made history today, pulling in the most Oscar nominations ever with 16 nods. CTV's Andrea Case has more on the Academy Award nominees announced today, including the Canadian contenders.
It is the not-so-little movie that could. K-pop Demon Hunters is now a two-time Academy Award-nominated film. Co-written and co-directed by Toronto's Maggie Kang, it is the first Korean animated film to contend for an Oscar. And the chart-topping song Golden from the film will face off in the Best Original Song category. Kang, a graduate of Oakville, Ontario's Sheridan College, will be joined by another former student, Domi Shi.
Okay, come and get me.
She is nominated for her animated film, Ilio. This is her third nomination, and she's hoping to add a second Academy Award to the one she won for Best Animated Short Film, Bao, in 2018. Toronto's J. Miles Dale is no stranger to film's big night. The producer of the 2019 Oscar-winning Best Picture, The Shape of Water, is back in Best Picture contention as a producer on Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Shot largely on Toronto's sound stages, the retelling of Mary Shelley's classic novel netted 9 nominations. 2 films from Quebec creatives will also be making the trip to Hollywood. 18 years ago, Montreal's Chris Lavie and Maciek Cherchabow's Madame Tuteli was nominated in the Best Animated Short Film category. They return with the stop-motion fable, The Girl Who Cried Pearls. And Montreal's award-winning documentarian Alison McAlpine's Perfectly a Strangeness is up for documentary short film. The 98th Annual Academy Awards, hosted once again by Conan O'Brien, will be broadcast on March 15th, right here on CTV. Andrea Case, CTV News.
And that is our newscast for this Thursday. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Thanks for sharing your time with us.